Hey, everybody. Ana Luisa and I have noticed over and over again when we've been interviewing people or teaching people about end of life stuff that it's really quite often the case that people don't understand what hospice is or does until they're facing one of the hardest moments of their lives. We often hear that I think the statistic is maybe only 2 weeks. People only spend 2 weeks in hospice quite often, and it's available 6 months, so it's really kind of a missed opportunity to have a really, really good care. So, in this conversation, we get to meet Priya Jayadev. She is the executive director of Volunteer Hospice of Clallam County. That's on the Olympic Peninsula in Washington State, right across the Salish Sea from where I live. Um, she shares why hospice is about far more than the final days of life when it's done well. And together we get to explore with her how compassionate, community-supported care can ease suffering, support families, and help people approach death with greater dignity and less fear.
That's right. She shares her experience with being a director of this nonprofit volunteer hospice, which I'm amazed at
Yeah,
how so many people have volunteered to support this place. Priya speaks to how nonprofit hospice organizations differ from the traditional hospice providers and why the volunteers are the heart of exceptional end of life care.
yeah,
And she also touches about a little bit about how to open conversations about death and how they can transform the experience of dying for individuals and families alike. Priya discusses the growing role of death cafes and community education in helping people prepare and understand the time of this universal experience that they're embarking on. Whether you're caring for an aging parent, supporting a loved one with a serious illness, working in healthcare, or simply wanting to better understand hospice, this episode offers practical guidance, compassionate insight, and hope for creating more connected communities. Welcome, everyone, to this episode of End of Life Conversations. I am the Reverend Mother Ana Luisa Armendariz, and today we are speaking with Priya Jayadev. Priya is the executive director of Volunteer Hospice of Clallam County, a community funded nonprofit providing an industry standard hospice care at no cost to patients.
mm,
She holds a PhD in cell biology from Duke University and spent 11 years in pharmaceutical research and development before transitioning into the nonprofit leadership role.
and we're so glad she has transitioned.
Yes,
Such great
yes,
work.
we
Yeah.
need her.
Yeah. I am
She,
the Reverend Wakil David Matthews. Priya previously served as executive director of Clallam Mosaic, supporting individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities. We want to hear some more about that, too. She currently serves as the president of the Port Angeles Chamber of Commerce and on the board of the Nonprofit Association of Washington. One of these people like Ana Luis and I who can't say no and who get ourselves into lots and lots of work. And I really can't tell you how much we appreciate the work you're doing. So I heard about you when I was over visiting Port Townsend, which is in the Clallam County where you live. And we were talking before we got on about how important it is to notice that what'd you say, 7 tribes? There are 7 tribes in Clallam
Yes, in
County?
this
Yeah.
area, yeah.
So that's, and it's a real big part of that county. So I'm sure that has something to do with the work you're doing as well. So we'd
Yep,
love to hear more about you and all you do.
yes, I'm
thank
so
you.
excited.
Thank
And
you for
welcome
having
again.
me. Yeah.
So let's start out by asking you what in your life inspired you to do this kind of work?
So I actually stumbled into this kind of work, but stumbled in a not almost intentional way in some ways. I will step back and say that when I was back in the for-profit world, I had the experience of having hospice come in and have a conversation with me during my dad's journey, his end of life
Mhm.
journey. We did not end up having hospice on board simply because his passing was very quick. He died within days. It wasn't enough time to get a hospice on board. That
Mm.
said, I remember the conversation with hospice settling us as a family, getting
Mhm.
us to a point of understanding what in the world is this all about, because none of us talk about it.
Mhm.
None of us are
Mhm.
prepared. We're always unprepared. And so that
Yes.
experience made a huge, huge impact on my psyche. So when
Mhm.
I came out to this area, and I was looking at positions, I initially was at Clallam Mosaic, and then as I moved to another job opportunity, this came to the forefront as something that really resonated with me, and that's how
Mm.
I
Mhm.
landed here. It was kind of a
Mhm.
stumble, kind of a little bit of a resonance. Yeah.
It was a calling.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah,
Yes.
yeah. It's funny how
Yes.
those happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
That's great. Well, I'd like to hear more. I'd like a little actually hear a little more about the mosaic one as well, since that's
Mhm.
always of
Mhm.
interest. And my wife works in that area as well, and then tell us more about that, and also the nonprofit you're working in now, and kind of what it's about, what it's doing, what its work is, what your
Yeah,
work
so when
is.
I moved out to the peninsula, I came from an industry position in pharmaceutical research. And so when you come out to the peninsula, that is not an opportunity that you could use as a job calling. So what I did have was experience with kind of administrative management and grant writing and a lot of the skill sets that translated well into nonprofits.
Hmm.
At that time, the opportunity that was available was with Cloud Mosaic. Again, a stumble into position. Um, I was there for 9 years, and I think I think there's value in having leadership at a nonprofit where you have lived experience. And I
Hmm.
can say that
Mhm.
I did not have someone with
Mhm.
direct relational contact with me who had significant intellectual developmental disabilities. So
Uh,
I think
Mhm.
it was time after 9 years to move to a different position where someone with lived experience could take on that leadership role.
hmm.
And so as I was looking at positions, this came to mind. And Volunteer Hospice is an interesting organization. One, it's like 1 in 4 in the nation
Hmm.
because we are
Mhm.
completely not just a nonprofit, but completely independent and community supported. We do
Yeah.
not bill Medicare. We do not bill
Wow.
Medicaid, private insurance.
Wow.
The patient, the family, nobody. We bill absolutely no one.
Mm.
We
Mm.
can do this in Washington State because um, Rose Crum, our founder, created volunteer hospice in 1978. And if you recall, the hospice concept reemerged in the US back in 70 or 72, 74 timeframe.
Hmm.
So 4 years into the reemergence of the concept, um, you know, Rose Crum here in Clallam County was this visionary nurse who was like, I want that to happen here. And
Hmm.
everyone in
Mhm.
this community was like, why would we want that? We don't need that here. And she was
Mhm.
a force of nature. She
Mhm.
made it happen. She created this organization. And then in the 80s and 90s, when Medicare started funding the hospice concept, because hospice obviously saves money in the healthcare system,
Hmm.
Right.
Medicare recognized that by the 80s and 90s and started funding it through a Medicare hospice benefit. When that came into play, Rose was like, nope, I want my independence. I don't want someone else telling me how I do my care. I want to do the best care possible.
Yeah.
And she mobilized her son,
Ah.
Patrick Crum, and she mobilized Derek Kilmer, who was in the state legislature at that time and then went on to federal representative position. But at the time, two very strong, powerful attorneys, and
Mm.
they put her in front of the Washington state legislature over and over and over until she got what she wanted. We
Mm.
have a carved
Mm.
out RCW exemption in Washington state to operate without Medicare licensure and still be
Wow.
a legal hospice operating in the hospice space.
Wow.
Wow.
So, what that allows us is the ability to be very different.
Yeah.
Our disciplines, when we got that licensure exemption, we had to put volunteer into our name. Up until
Mhm.
then, we were
Mhm.
Hospice of Clallam County, but then we became Volunteer Hospice of Clallam County. And there's a bit of a misunderstanding that we're all volunteers. We are not. We
Mhm.
have
Mhm.
staff, paid staff, as well as volunteers. But
Mhm.
but our paid staff is very limited in
Mm.
disciplines. Our paid staff are nurses and nurses aides and programmatic support activities.
Mm.
So other than that, we have a cohort of volunteers, wraparound support, and we come
Mhm.
in partnership. We don't, as a hospice, come in and take over the patient. We come in
Mhm.
partnership with the existing care team. So
Mhm.
stepping back to just put a little bit more framework on it, we have about 17 to 19 staff.
Hmm.
Majority of those are nurses. Nurses represent the core of care in hospice care. So the
Yeah.
Mhm.
majority of our team is nurses. We have
Mhm.
3 nurses aides. We have about 4 people in our programmatic support staff. And then wrapping around that, we have almost 200 volunteers.
Wow.
Mhm.
Those volunteers run our front desk. They run our lending program. They run the lending closets that we have where
Mhm.
anyone in the community can come and borrow equipment. No questions asked, no timelines put on
Mhm.
it.
Mhm.
They run our delivery program, which delivers things that have to be assembled within the house
Hmm.
for community
Mhm.
members. So hospital beds, transfer poles, those kind of things. And for patients, many other things can also be delivered,
Mhm.
not requiring assembly. Those can
Mhm.
also be delivered. For community members, delivery is only of things that require assembly. So our
Hmm.
volunteers run the lending program. They run
Wow.
Mhm.
our front desk. They also are the people that go in to do respite care. They are
Hmm.
Mhm.
also the ones that do
Mhm.
one-on-one grief support. They are the ones that run our grief support groups.
Wow.
They do
Wow.
a number of things.
Mhm.
They run the Death Cafés that we have, which is
Hmm.
open conversations
Mhm.
for community to come talk about death and dying. Um,
Mhm.
and they do all kinds of other things that are, one-off special based
Mhm.
activities.
Wow. Wow.
So we have this team that's very small, that's staff. So we have
Mhm.
partners like the physician that is the referring physician
Hmm.
stays
That's what I
on
was gonna
the
ask
team.
about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, but let me ask you this, is this a facility or are you out in people's homes?
We do all of our work in the home that the patient calls home.
Hmm.
Okay.
Majority of the time, it is a private house.
Mhm.
Sometimes it is a facility like a supported nursing facility or an
That's
adult
right.
family home or, other kind of
Mhm.
setting. But generally, I would say 90 to 95% of our patients live at home in a private home.
Hmm. Wow.
Okay.
That's great
And
too. That's wonderful.
yeah. And so the physician is the person who was attending to that person. So you do have a bunch of physicians who are still contributing to the team.
Right.
Hmm. Yeah, that
We
makes
have
Okay.
their
sense.
providers stay on, and in fact,
Hmm.
Okay.
I mean, with end of life, you've got medications that are, pretty
That's
heavy
right.
duty medications sometimes.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Not that it's required, but oftentimes to manage pain and comfort, that is needed.
Mhm.
And
That's right.
in those
Okay.
situations, that patient's original physician stays on board and
Hmm.
is their
Hmm.
their provider. And
Okay,
if you
good.
think about it
Yeah.
from a continuity of care piece, who knows them
Mhm.
Makes
better?
sense.
Somebody
Yeah.
coming new
Yeah.
to the
Mhm.
game at end of life
Mhm.
or somebody who's been with them for a while? It's
Yeah,
That's
I
right.
love
complicated.
that.
Yeah.
That concept is so good.
Mhm.
And
Yep.
having worked in hospice and both of us have done that and chaplaincy and hospice and
Yeah.
the commercialization of it after now that it's become financially
For profit.
for
Yeah.
profit in
Mhm.
most
Yeah.
cases, I think has been the downfall of hospice because it's really
Mhm.
and I love that
Mhm.
the nurse that took it upon herself to create something different and
Yeah.
really go
Yeah.
back to what it was meant to
Mhm.
be in the first place. I think it was meant to be
Yeah.
a community connection, a way to a community to support each other. And I think we very much are believers in the community support and every little community. That's really all we have when it comes right down to it, and to have a way
Mhm.
to bring those folks in. So my question would be around a
Mhm.
couple of the other people who are usually parts of that team. So are there people who do like the social worker role or the chaplaincy role?
Mhm.
Or do you just, is that from their own community that's already there? So often people have somebody in their spiritual community.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
how does that
So the
address?
chaplaincy role is actually done by a myriad of volunteers. I think we have 9 spiritual care volunteers that are
Oh,
active.
Mhm.
We have more than that, but currently active, I think we have 9.
hmm.
And the chaplaincy piece has worked in that volunteer modality.
Okay.
And we have some chaplains, who are very much aligned with a particular faith, and
Hmm.
some who
Mhm.
are not, who are very more
Right.
generalists,
Right.
and then everything in between. right? And so we are able to, with this volunteer corps, match the chaplaincy piece and the spiritual care piece with the need of the patient. So we've been fortunate in that that has worked.
That really
So
is amazing. Yeah. I
yeah,
mean, I'll note people may not know what the peninsula is when you said that, and that's the Olympic Peninsula in Seattle, west of Seattle, and it is basically rural, kind of a rural area.
very much.
And so that's the point that she made about it being unlikely to find a big corporate job there unless you're
Yeah,
willing to
yeah,
commute a
yeah,
long distance. But
yeah.
yeah, so I wanted to make that clear for folks, and that
Hey,
also to me really makes it remarkable that you have that um, amount of volunteers
Volunteers?
available. Yeah,
200. That's
yeah,
so
that's
impressive.
the
yeah.
other part of the peninsula is that many people retire here, right?
Oh
So we
yeah.
Mhm.
have a tremendous expertise base. It's a matter of them coming out of the woodwork and finding us or us finding them.
Mhm.
That's a good.
And
Yeah.
that's the piece, though, I want to also address the
Mm.
second part of the question you asked, which was the social work piece.
Hmm.
And that piece of connecting patients with community resources,
Yeah.
we have been less successful in finding enough social work support. And I'm going to just
Mhm.
take a little bit of a tangent and say, because many of our families, like across the world, not just the US, but across the world, they are in caregiving crisis when they're in their end of life journey. And
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yes.
social work is that piece
Mhm.
of patching together resources
Mhm.
for the caregiving support.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
we have not had sufficient ability to support all our
Mhm.
families with that support to enable, caregiving resources into
Mm.
Mhm.
the home setting.
Yeah.
So
Mhm.
I think it would be valuable for us to have a paid staff
Mm.
member in social work.
Hmm.
Um, Unfortunately, right now we do not have that capacity, but I do hope to make that happen as a paid staff member in future, whether
Oh, that's
part time or
great.
Mhm.
full time. I would like that.
Mhm. Mhm.
So
Hmm.
spiritual care, we've been fortunate. I think many of the retirees that have come to us have that expertise, have that background, have that capability, or that background training.
Hmm.
Um, with social work, many of the retirees that are, or the volunteers that have come to us, have not been able to completely fulfill the need.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Understood. Understood.
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow. That's incredible work, and I can certainly understand how that could be an issue for sure. We have interviewed lots and lots of death doulas,
Mhm.
and I'm wondering if some of the volunteers are considered death doulas or are
Yeah.
trained as death
I
doulas.
had the same question. I was like, "Are there doulas
So,
on board? There's so many out
so,
there."
it's actually interesting. We did not have very many, if any, death doulas in our community. So about 4 years ago, Astrid Raffenpelos, who manages our volunteers, she's our volunteer services manager. She took it upon herself to schedule a death doula training that came
Oh,
in house,
good.
and we trained a cohort. I think the first year of 9 death doulas. And then
Mhm.
subsequently, she did a second training session where she also got trained the trainer training. So she is
Hmm.
Mhm.
now a trainer for death doulas. And then she ran a
Mhm.
third cohort, which then we now have 3 cohorts
Wow.
Mhm.
of death doulas that are trained. And I think overall about 20 to 21 individual death doulas. Now,
Hmm.
saying that, each person in that cohort has a different flavor, so to speak, different
Yes,
Yeah.
interest
yes,
area.
yes,
Some
yes.
are more capable of coming in and helping with paperwork. Some are more that, end of life vigil piece. Some
Hmm.
are more spiritual. And it's a whole
Mhm.
range of
That's
Yeah.
individuals
right.
in that
Yeah.
cohort. Yeah.
That's been our experience. We've had many of them on, and they're
They're
as
all
unique
different.
as human beings.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah.
They are.
As we
Yeah.
say, everybody lives their own unique way, and everybody dies their own unique way, and everybody death doulas their own unique
You're
way.
right, yes.
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
are they part of the volunteer cohort then as
Yes.
well?
Yes,
Yes,
Hmm.
they
okay.
are. And oftentimes they're the ones that go in and do like a support visit just to see, hey, what's going
Mhm.
on in the home?
Mhm.
Let's
Yeah.
suss out
Mhm.
what needs might be there. They're the
Mhm.
ones that sometimes provide respite. They
Hmm.
are
Mhm.
there for emotional support. Sometimes the family is truly in like grief even before death.
Right.
So anticipatory grief support, all
Yeah.
kinds of things that they are
Mhm.
they're
So they're
tagged to
wearing a
help.
lot of different hats.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
They're not
Which
just
is yeah.
doulaing for the client, but they're midwifing the entire crew.
indeed. Indeed.
And that tends to be the job description in a way for doula is this person has that wide range and as you said, specializes usually in one thing or another.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
great. Let's see. Go ahead.
So the challenges, but we already heard some of the challenges around the need for social workers. What other challenges are you met with in your day to
So
day?
I will tell you, I also said that we do partnership with the provider, the physician. So, where that becomes a challenge is that oftentimes we have a patient in crisis and we need to manage that crisis with a medication adjustment. Sometimes a primary care provider is not near there when you need them. So, what we have in place are these things called emergency prescriptions and standing orders so that we can execute something even when the PCP is not present to immediately support.
Mm,
It would be valuable, I think, for us to have a part-time provider who can help us with navigating some of this during some extreme emergency situations. So that is something that would help us. Again, it's a capacity piece of what does our budget carry us to allow us to do.
yeah.
Right now, it allows us to deliver at the level we can. And I will say that when we say deliver at the level we can, it is a very different delivery as well. There are times where our nurses go into a home and they can spend 4 hours. That is not the norm. That is not
That's
what's
right.
generally happening. That wouldn't be tenable for every patient all the time. But there are times when a patient and a family need that. And
Yeah.
so we are able to deliver that. So enabling that means that, the rest of the caseload is something you shift, it moves to your peers, all of the things. We can accommodate that level of flexibility when a patient is in need, when a family is in need.
Yeah.
In order to do that, our expenses essentially are focused on that nursing need and funding that nursing need. So when we talk about expanding, how do we expand, right? Do we expand with disciplines like social work and physician provider? Or do we
Or
expand in terms of caseload because the
yeah.
demand is greater than the need? Because
Sure.
with our facility, we can do with our flexibility, we can do hospice, but we can also do palliative. And there are numerous people that come to us because they need palliation.
Yeah.
It's not just that last 6 months. We can support anything so long as you have a life-living illness and you have a nursing level need, we can support you. And what we're trying to do is triage the most needy first.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
there's also 100 other people that's in our palliative referral list, right? So,
Sure.
so what do we optimize for? The
Yeah.
extra disciplines, increasing our caseload because every person that comes into our practice is expense with no concomitant income. So, yes, we can achieve about 100 right now on caseload on a daily basis, but to
Mm.
grow it to 150 or 200, that's increased expense. How
Yeah,
do we
that's
manage
huge.
that?
Yeah.
So it's
So
that piece of what do we do?
yeah,
That's
yeah.
right. Oh my
Yeah.
goodness, what a
Yeah,
dance it really
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
yeah,
So I can imagine, as with any nonprofit, one of the challenges is always getting more money to come in. But it's also, as you said, it's and because being in corporate hospice, I know that you have 10 patients you have to see today, and you have to get through all of them. And I love that flexibility is given to you by being independent of that,
yeah,
because that's so important. And so often when we were with somebody, we were like, we need to be here longer, but we
But
can't
you can't. That's
because we've
right.
got to drive
yeah,
all the way across King County to our next patient before
yeah.
the end of the day. And so, yeah, I think that's really important to note as a wonderful benefit and a wonderful reason for people to give you more money. Right?
Well, we're fortunate. I mean, at end of life, people are thinking about their legacy.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
so there
Oh,
is that fortunate aspect of it in
yeah,
terms of
yeah.
this space of nonprofits
I
and
was going
giving.
to ask that because you are supporting people who don't have to pay any money and who probably that is a
Yeah,
need that they have.
yeah,
But are there people who are well enough off that they can actually contribute to you, or that maybe that's through a donation process or something that they
yeah.
do?
So
Yeah.
I will say that 85 to 90% of my budget is donation. So
Mhm.
individual donor base.
Wow.
The rest
That's smart.
is local community grants. foundations that are very focused on this community that do give to us, especially for our nursing supplies. We do rely on our foundations that are local. That said, I run a $2 million budget currently,
Wow.
and annualized, I struggle with raising that full amount on an annualized basis. We are
Mhm.
Yeah.
fortunate in that we have a little bit of reserve that's board designated reserve that does allow me to run a budget which is in deficit to some extent, but that's not a sustainable model. And my goal before I
Right.
leave this organization is to raise that reserve so that we never touch the corpus, but we always focus on just getting the interest off it so that we can be sustainable for the long.
Yes.
Yeah.
I
Wow.
really, I mean, I hope people who are listening to this and have deep pockets would contribute to this because one, it's amazing. But
Thank
I've been working on getting ready to do some grant writing. But I always remind people, 64 million, boomers are going to be passing through possibly your doors in the next 30 years. We need you to be ready for that
Yeah.
financially. With a lot of people trained to do this work because it's imperative that we see it coming. So
Yeah. Yeah.
please help.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and help your own local. I like the local way of looking at things too, because I think that's so important. And Clallam County folks, you're tuned into them. I'm tuned into Snohomish County, North King County, maybe, and Ana Luisa is in Denver. And so I think what I found, and when I first kind of reached out to people for this nonprofit, asking them if they'd like to be a part of the kind of the resource list, they quite often there were people like. I was only in Washington State, and they would write back and say, "Well, I'm in Spokane or I'm in Vancouver or whatever," and my response became after thinking about this and working on it for a while, "Well, that's great. You do your thing there. We'll support you with a database that we'll create. We have there's a death care cooperative here in Seattle." Collaborative in Seattle that's putting together a database of resources. So
Okay.
we're working with them. So we'll have a database of resources that's statewide and eventually could be modeled everywhere. But I think it does come down every time to being mutual aid. Mutual aid in your own community is what
That's
really
right.
makes the most sense. So I
Yes.
appreciate that you're doing that work.
I do too.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Where are we?
Sir, it's your turn, my dear.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Um, well, I think I'll just go right to this because I think this is always important for us. Is that how do you resource yourself when when the world gets a little too crazy or when the work gets a little too hard? And is there anything about that's difficult? And then how do you resource yourself? What do you use? Because I think we all need to find more ways to do that.
Yeah.
To-
Yeah. I think a number of things. So I I have a tendency to over volunteer.
Ah,
we heard that. We heard
I
that up
see
front.
you.
Yeah.
So I get involved with a lot of local activities. And so, for example, this weekend, I spent all of Saturday managing vendors for the Chamber of Commerce, right? We had a July 4th celebration here in town. And from 8 in the morning until 11 at night, I was helping manage all the vendors at the event.
Mm,
Um, so I enjoy kind of disconnecting from the day to day of hospice, palliative, illness, and connecting with joy, like the celebration this weekend or Wanda Fuca Festival or the Crab Festival, but just engaging with community in a joyous manner. I
yeah.
think that fills my cup to a large extent. And I have family in Seattle. I have family, locally that I can connect with. That is a huge part of that filling my cup piece too. But more than anything, I live on the Olympic Peninsula. It is paradise. I can walk out my door and go hiking at the drop of a hat, whether
Lucky
it's
ducky.
raining or not.
Mhm.
It is
Yeah.
phenomenal. This
Mm,
area is rejuvenating
wonderful.
just living here.
Yeah.
So there's that piece as well. Yeah.
That's for sure.
Oh,
That's for sure.
that's
Yeah, I love that.
wonderful.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, I had thought of something earlier on that I wanted to bring up, and I wonder because one of the things when we talk to death doulas or people working in that area is that they often end up working for nothing, and many of them are trying to make a living. And so I wonder if there's any thought of somehow how they could be compensated, especially if they're trained as a death doula. Is there anywhere way for them to be compensated, and maybe another work around that area? Or how does that work out for you and the
So
folks that
I
you've
know
trained?
that a number of families that we have supported have had paid death doulas
Okay.
that have come from out of area, in area. It's been varied.
Hmm.
Um, I think, like you were talking about, of end of life resources, having a resource list and us aware of it. So when our patients ask for resources, that is something we can share with them, right? Our
Hmm.
death doulas can only do so much.
Yeah.
They are volunteers, but as you said,
Mm-hmm.
you have to make a living. You have to live a life.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And to be able to do that, I think it's making yourself visible in this community. It's hard to find the resources. So anything that can facilitate finding the death doulas when we need them, because we've had numerous patients who've asked for it and there
Hmm.
isn't someone available. Either
Yeah.
the ones that are available are already busy or they're just not here.
Yeah.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
and so, yeah, having a resource list would be a huge piece of that because in the situations where our patients need it, we can at least use that as a referral source.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah. Well, we're
Mm-hmm.
gonna definitely this one that I'm hoping to help with. We will definitely be sharing, and so we might just be able to connect. All of us connect in that collaborative, the Death Care
Mm-hmm.
Cooperative. I think the more the better, and that we all can share more resources that way. So,
Yep.
yeah,
Yep.
let's keep working on that for together.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes,
Absolutely.
and the last piece for us is, what do you wish we had asked you? What do you want to share with our audience?
Yeah. So I didn't put a thought into this. So give me a second.
Yeah.
Um, what are the things I think giving people the understanding that it's never too early to talk about death, right? I think we live in this death phobic culture,
Yeah.
Yes.
right? And so one of the things I would like to talk about, I don't know what the question would have been, but I think is the point of everyone needs to focus on planning and planning early.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And just because you talk about death doesn't invite it in, right?
Mm-hmm.
But
That's
if
right.
you don't talk about it, it's too late when you
You're in
need the
crisis.
resources. And
Yeah.
so the
Mm-hmm.
crisis hits, and you're not capable of doing the things that you need to have the
Mm-hmm.
best end of life journey possible,
Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think it was
Mm-hmm.
Athil Gawande who said it's not about uh, creating the best death, but it's about creating the best life till the very end. And in
That's
Hmm.
order to
right.
have the best life till the very end, you need to
Mm-hmm.
talk about it sooner so that
That's
it
right.
can actually be that
It
best
can
life at
manifest.
the
That's
very end.
right.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's
That's
right.
right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Oh, I love that.
So true, so true. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
basically why we're doing this podcast for 3 years now,
Uh-huh.
is because we
Uh-huh.
really have that same mission, that same belief, and that same hope that people will pay attention. There's that we the statistic that knocked our socks off a while back that we often share is that over 60% of siblings never talk to each other after their parent dies,
Yep.
and it's
Mm-hmm.
because of having never spoken about this to each other, never
They
had
fight
this
about it at the
conversation.
end. Yeah.
Yeah, and so
Yeah.
they're all mad at each other, and they never
Yep.
then they just it ruins lives.
Yeah.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
It's unfortunate.
so yeah, so we are big advocates for that, big advocates for sharing resources, and
Mm-hmm.
so appreciative of the model of what you're doing. I hope more people will be inspired to create
Mm-hmm.
similar models in their communities. I'm not sure if I guess that's a question. Is that something that volunteer hospice does a can people reach out to you and say, "We wanna start one in our community"? Is that something that
I,
happens or is done?
people can absolutely reach out to me. I will
Mhm.
say that we have a 48-year history,
Yeah.
and because of that history, we have donations coming in, right?
Mhm.
Money is
Mm-hmm.
always the barrier, right?
Yeah, yeah.
In order
Right.
to create this, it's not trivial in cost. So if you don't have that existing history where the community already understands the value of this, then
Mm,
it's hard to create that. You would need a huge bolus to start. I
yeah.
would
Mhm.
love to create a movement. Let's do hospice right,
Mhm.
right? I would
Mhm.
love to create
Mhm.
that movement.
Oh, yeah.
Um, and
Great,
but
great,
but
wonderful idea.
there's a cost to it.
Yeah,
There's a cost,
Mhm.
and
yeah.
how do you get across that cost barrier? That's the key question.
Mhm.
We need to
Mhm.
find one of those guys with too much money in there and causing too much trouble with it to.
Melinda French Gates or something has
Yeah,
to come
yeah.
and fund this
Well,
arena for
she's
multiple.
likely. Yeah, I'm thinking
Yeah,
of the ones
yeah,
who are less likely
yeah,
to do that.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
But
yeah,
something like that would be great to have them take this on
exactly,
as their
exactly.
their new
Mhm.
job for the world to create these all over the world.
That would be
Yeah. So
lovely.
yeah. Well, we can wish for that. We can hope for that. We can pray for that. We can send up our vibes and say, yes, let's make this happen. And we can,
Mhm.
in our own communities, all of us here and in the audience, can think about how we might make something like that happen and reach
That's right.
out to us or to Priya. And thanks so much for the work you do.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
Yes.
really
Thank you for
appreciate
having
it.
me. I
Would
appreciate
you?
being
Well,
able to talk about it.
and don't leave yet because you have to read your poem or your quote that you shared.
Oh,
Oh,
Do
I
yeah.
you have it in front of
did
you?
share. I will in a minute. Give me
Okay.
1 second.
We have it here, so it's no worries too. We could
Uh,
read it for you, or you could read it.
well, it goes to the death phobic piece, right?
Yeah. Yeah,
My quote is
exactly.
from Lily Pincus, and it's thinking and talking about death need not be morbid. They may be quite the opposite. Ignorance and fear of death overshadow life, while knowing and accepting death erases this shadow.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's right.
Beautiful.
It's not morbid. Thank you
Yeah.
so much for sharing that.
Yeah, and for
Absolutely.
sharing your work and your we
Mhm.
really it's so great to meet a fellow human on this path.
That's right.
Grief and loss, conversations about the end of life.
Thank you for joining us today. Thank you to Charles Heaston, the composer of the original music you are listening to now.
And of course, thanks to you, our audience, and all of our amazing guests. Please come back next week for another great episode. Share this with your friends, family, and community. We hope you will subscribe and follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Blue Sky, and Substack. Each guest's additional information will be found in the podcast notes. And of course, if you have a good end-of-life story to share, please reach out. We are always eager to hear from you.